Oracle server, you might be running 1,000 Mongo servers because you've got 5 petabytes of data that is spread across all these machines. And so the thing you really care about there is being able to manage this stuff really easily. And we've also built this tool. We don't really have time to do a full demonstration of it. Built into MMS. And what this lets you do is it basically lets you deploy and manage your servers both in AWS and anywhere you want from a nice UI or via an API. So for example, let's say you want to go build a 10-shard cluster on AWS. You can put in your AWS credentials into the service. It will then go and deploy those machines, run MongoDB on them. When you want to go upgrade them 3 months later, you go change the version, and it will do a rolling upgrade in the background. If you want to change some options, it will change those in the background as well, all with, with zero downtime, without having you to have to write scripts, move things around, move data around, and do a bunch of work that's kind of annoying. And when you are upgrading 300 machines, it can be a challenge. And if you're doing 300 machines across multiple data centers, where networks can go down, things can crash, you really don't want to have to be keeping that all in your head, because it does become fairly complicated. So that's a pretty big feature for us in terms of making sure you can manage this sort of massive horizontal system. So, thanks. So, the next, couple things I want to talk about were sort of Meteor specific. I was actually hanging out with Mark and David earlier. It's close. Sorry, Matt and David. Been a long week. Matt and David earlier. And we were talking about some things we were doing on actually trying to make some of the Mongo Meteor integration a lot cleaner. Right? The Meteor community is obviously growing pretty rapidly. The integration is obviously, the tighter it is, the better it is for everyone. So I think there's some cool stuff that we're going to be working on over the next couple of months involving making real-time queries and sort of the updating queries a lot faster, where we can make use of the op log a lot better. Right? Especially now with MongoDB 2.8 and much higher vertical scalability, the number of operations being logged every second into Mongo can be very high. If you're logging 173,000 operations per second into a single Mongo server, you want the real-time updating of queries to be able to keep up, and you need that to be very fast. And so I think we're going to be working together on some cool things there to make sure we keep that in sync. So as you're writing a ton of data into Mongo, everything on the Meteor side keeps up, and everything moves really well there. So Mongo 2.8 is in the release candidate phase right now. RC2 came out this morning. There'll probably be a 3. We'll see if there's a 4. It really depends on how many bugs there are. It's very helpful for us if you actually download it, try it, break it, and let us know about it. There's actually a bug hunt, so if you download it and break it, you can win prizes. There's actually some cool prizes. There are some prizes about coming to like CS Talk, which may not be that exciting, but there are some prizes where you can win like $1,000, which might be more exciting. So really do want people to download it, try it, really try to break it, put all your workloads underneath it, and see if it works a lot better. If some things are worse, some things are better. That's pretty nice. The last thing I'll mention on 2.8 is the old storage engine, which we've now called mmap v1. It's not a very cool name because it's not a very cool storage engine anymore. So it did have some improvements also. Right? So I said before, the concurrency scheme in this thing is so confusing, no one actually understands what it is. But there is some notion of database level locking that you might have heard about on Hacker News. And the database level locks have now been replaced with collection level locks. So even just doing a simple upgrade from 2.6 to 2.8 will get you improvements, even without changing a storage engine. And I lied. The absolute last thing I'll mention, since I have 1 minute left, is how you can do an upgrade from 2.6 to 2.8 in the new storage engine. So let's say you have a 3-node replica set in Mongo 2.6, and you want to upgrade it to 2.8 with the new fancy storage engine. It's very simple. What you do is you actually just do a simple upgrade from 2.6 to 2.8, from 2.6 to 2.8. That's just a simple binary upgrade. Now it's going to be using the new mmap v1 storage engine, which is the new version of that with collection level locking. That's sort of a zero downtime, zero data migration change. And then what you can do is you can add a 4th member to your replica set with the WireTiger storage engine. It will sync up and do the initial sync just like any other Mongo replica set member. You can then go and change the primary of your replica set to this new WireTiger storage engine for 5 minutes just to see what happens, just to see if it's working really well. If it's working well, you can upgrade all your other ones. If it's not working well, you can shut it down and send me an email that is probably relatively nasty, but hopefully nicer than that, and we'll try to figure out what's going on. So it's very easy to migrate these things. You can also keep them. You can also have multiples running at different times for different kinds of queries, and all sorts of other cool stuff that I only have 6 seconds, so I can't talk about it anyway. All right, so I think thanks for that. And now I guess we'll open it up to questions. You heard a rumor about native joins. Yeah, I talked about this. So we had a big conference, Mongo SF, yesterday. I talked about it there yesterday. And joins are an interesting thing, only because I think that we'll never do what you consider joins today, but we'll do something that might be even better. So the challenge with joins, and I think they said 5 minutes for this. All right. Let's try to figure out how to answer this question in 30 seconds or less. So the problem with joins in a horizontally scaled database is that you want to not have it go across many machines, because you want things to be able to be fast and low latency, and especially when you have multi-data center deployments. Right? In one data center, you can use really fancy hardware, but if you've got data centers all over the world, you can't do that anymore. So what you want to be able to do is say, I've got 3 collections. They're all sharded on user ID. Maybe you've got user profiles, user events, user something else, all sharded on user ID. What you want to be able to tell MongoDB is that for every document with the same user ID, it has to live in the same shard. Then once you do that, joins across those collections, even if there's lots of documents, are guaranteed to be very fast because they're all on the same machine. Then the question is, how do you query that? And the way we're thinking about it is more of, think of if I've got a user profile document and it's got a list of events that person, or a list of actions that person has, or maybe the other way is even better. If I've got a list of events for each user, that event document can link back to a user document, and you should be able to do a query that basically evaluates that link. So I can say, find me all events, follow this link to this user profile, so I know that if this person is in California, they're better than people from New York. I'm from New York, so it's funny. So it's sort of like joins, but not exactly like joins, but basically the same kind of thing. And by the way, that exact same policy on joins will also be the way that we're going to do multi-document transactions, where you'll be able to do multi-document transactions across people sharded on the same key. So if you've got a user profile and you've got like 1 million documents for a single user, you can actually do a multi-document transaction across all documents sharded with that same key. Lots of use cases there. Is that a question?
Why did you use Wildfire as the default storage engine?
The question is, why didn't we use WireTiger as the default storage engine? So the main reason we didn't is because, well, it's brand new. 2 is there's obviously a lot of people using MongoDB very happily right now. And for those people, since WireTiger is brand new, we didn't want to break anything. The people who need a faster storage engine are going to be very excited about WireTiger, and I think are going to try it out. The goal for us is that MongoDB 3.0 will come out sometime next year. We will change the default, but this is a database. We are being very paranoid about this change. It is a very big change, so we just want to be as paranoid as we possibly could be. But the plan and the goal is that for 3.0, the default does change.
We have time for one last question.
Sorry? What's the story for triggers? So I thought with Meteor you don't need triggers anymore. No? Maybe? So I think for triggers it's sort of interesting. What Meteor does is tail the op log and then does stuff off that. As I said before, we're doing some work with Meteor to try to make looking at the op log and doing things with those events easier. I think what we'll end up doing is doing that work and then building some adapters where you can say, okay, I'm going to tail the op log, and then based off of those events, do whatever you want. Right? So I don't think it'll be built into the database, mainly because I don't think we want it to be part of the transaction. Right? When you modify a document, there's a transaction that is, has to do with the op log and all the indexes, and I don't think we want triggers to be tied to that transaction. I think we want triggers to be asynchronous. So if you want to go update some cache or go do some other work, it just happens in the background, and keep that a little bit separate and a little bit cleaner. So I think it'll be more that way. So actually the work that we're doing with Meteor is actually highly relevant, and that may morph into something that looks more like what you might want from triggers. Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right, our next speaker is Ry Walker, co-founder of Differential, presenting alongside Greg Nyheisel, partner at Differential. Differential is a venture studio that specializes in Meteor development. They are heavily involved in Cincinnati's tech startup ecosystem and are one of the leading Meteor consulting shops, having launched dozens of Meteor apps and authored numerous open source Meteor packages. They also lead the Cincinnati Meteor Meetup and co-host the Meteor podcast. Tonight, they are presenting their integration of Meteor with the Polymer library for web components. Please welcome Ry and Greg.
Alrighty, let's go. Awesome news about Mongo, right? Come on in here. All right, so I'm Rye Walker. This is Greg, and I just wanted to real quick. She gave a great intro what differential is, but I have to like just say real quick because everyone knows what Mongo is. Not everyone knows what differential is. As she said, we're Devshop. We've got 10 developers now. We do equity work for some Meteor startups. We're also building internal products using Meteor. User Cycles, one of them, Assistant, Carp, and yeah, she already told you all the rest of that stuff. So, I'm assuming that not everyone here is a Meteor pro, but with our time on the stage here, we wanted to just explain why we love Meteor as much as we do. First of all, I'm coming from a Rails background. It's beautiful to be able to use one language from the client to the server and in the database. We're JavaScript all day long now, and it really simplifies the world of development for us. The reactive nature of Meteor is obviously a big draw for everybody to come to it. But again, for us, we can build modern, awesome apps with what I perceive to be about half the time as it used to take us. And obviously the great work with Cordova now that we can build native mobile apps with the same code is kind of mind-blowing. We have to keep remembering how awesome that is. All of a sudden we can all make mobile native apps now. It's a big responsibility, but I think we can take that. And then again, if you're doing Meteor, make sure you really understand the power of Atmosphere and all the packages that are out there. I often say, like, if you're writing a lot of code while building a Meteor app, you're doing something wrong because someone else has probably written some of that code and you don't need to write it all. So the app we're going to demo with Meteor and Polymer is a product called User Cycle. It's a joint partnership with Ash Maurya, the author of Running Lean and Differential. Basically, the idea is that we love cohort-based metrics, and to get this stuff normally, you have to buy an expensive product or you have to have a data scientist. We're making a tool that's free for all web apps, really basic retention, analytics, things like that, because it's a really important thing. I'm big into product development, and so it's a tool we want for ourselves, and it's a tool that, we'll talk more about that later. And I'll let Greg talk a little bit about what Polymer is.
Yeah, so Polymer, we originally were attracted to Polymer because our designer kind of got attracted to the material design that Google's put out. And it is beautiful and everything, so we jumped right on board. So Polymer is just like it's a layer on top of these upcoming web component specs down there in the bottom right. Polymer is just some syntactic sugar on top of the specs. So there's a couple new things coming up. Is the custom elements, the HTML imports, templates, and shadow DOM. So the custom elements, really, if you're familiar with Angular, it's kind of like the directives. You can define, elements that you can really, use them just like you would any other HTML element, like a div or span or anything like that. And those HTML imports, which they're just really just a link tag that'll let you import external resources, external bits of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And then templates are, they're really nothing fancy there. They're a lot dumber than Meteor templates, really. They don't do too much. They're just inert chunks of HTML that you can activate later wherever you need to be. And then there's the shadow DOM, which is just lets you encapsulate bits of your custom elements so they don't leak out into the rest of your application, which is nice.
All right, so everyone get that? Got all those memorized? No. It's a pretty complicated domain, what Polymer is, but we're going to show it now rather than just talk about it. So again, so that I didn't shock you, I told you what User Cycle was up front. I'm just going to navigate the website, and you're going to describe some of the things that are happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. Let's see. The first kind of thing, like I said, we were initially drawn to like the UI components of that Polymer gives you. So you see these paper ripples, they're called, everything like you touch is kind of ripply, and it kind of lets you know that you're touching it, especially when you're on a phone. It's kind of important. And you see on these inputs, like these floating labels that kind of automatically, as soon as you focus on the input, they kind of raise up so you can still see the label. Really nice looking. Let's see, what's the next one? So yeah, in addition to like these kind of visual ones, they also provide some elements they provide some like scaffolding kind of features. So like one of them is this core drawer panel. So you can see right there. So on a desktop kind of resolution or size, you can see that it was kind of automatically expanded, and it was just all out there. Smaller screens, it automatically collapses in and becomes, you can swipe through, you can swipe from the side to get it out on a mobile or touch, and it slides out. So it's real nice. So inside of that, there's a core menu. So there's a lot of components that let you kind of it's another scaffolding one that lets you draw out the menu real easily, and it kind of indents and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry,
yeah.
I screwed that up. Yeah, so that's this little drop-downy thing.
Yeah.
It's all animated very nicely by the people who designed.
And it's all for free,
Yeah.
so you don't have to do anything to get all that. So the other one is these paper tabs, which you see has the ripple effect. This one's kind of cool because you can see the routes actually changing as he's kind of tabbing through there. The routes are changing, so we're using a new Meteor package called Bender. You've probably seen it around. For the transitions, and we're using Iron Router and some nested layouts, which kind of amount up to this kind of cool little thing. So that's a nice integration between Meteor and Polymer. The core header panel, so you might want to go to a project.
Okay,
yeah. Yeah, so this core, it's not a big deal. It's not a huge one, but again, it's all for free. So you can see as things slide underneath each other, you get these drop shadows and all this. This is all comes built in, which is nice. There's an element called paper shadow, which you'll see right under there. You can see, so you can just wrap any element in this paper shadow HTML element, and you get this kind of lifted off, appearance, which is nice. So this is a paper progress bar, and what's cool about this is that, that's just the HTML element, the paper progress, and you can see that we're using Blaze or Meteor to update an attribute on that element reactively. So the database is,
there you are.
so the server's updating a collection which has the progress in it, and then that's reactively being sent down. Blaze takes care of rendering that attribute, and the progress moves on. So the main point here is that it works great with Meteor. There's nothing you have to do extra to get these nice features to work with Meteor. So they play very nicely together.
So this is the shadow DOM that he mentioned on that one slide, the last thing. There's actually a complex HTML structure inside of the tag that you normally don't have to mess around with if you're just consuming these elements. If you're creating them, you have to think about that stuff. So
yeah, but it's all encapsulated, so it doesn't bleed out. None of the script or none of the CSS bleeds out. So you can think of it really just as like a native browser, like a native HTML element.
A really important point to note on this is that Greg and I were not designers. We built this app without a designer. So it looks pretty darn, the homepage a designer was involved with, but like all this other stuff is pretty much programmer driven, which, like all these animations and drop downs, you don't have to ask someone on the front end to work on this stuff. All right, so are we done with all that? Yeah, we had spinner. Yeah, the other little thing, this little spinner. So again, all these things are coming from us for free. So let's look at some code. Let's start with the Bower file.
Yeah, so right now the preferred way to work with Polymer is to use Bower. I think there's a package out there. I don't know. I think all it did was pull in, just ran Bower and pulled in these three. The top three, they're the Polymer, core elements, paper elements. All you do is just Bower install, and it pulls those in. You have Bower configured to chuck all that stuff into your public directory, which is important because you don't want the Meteor build tool to touch any of these things because there are some overlapping syntax. Yeah. So once you have them imported, once you do a Bower install update, pulls them all in, you can use the HTML imports, which is part of the spec. You can pull those in, and then once you have them, this normally goes into like your head tag and your HTML. It pulls them all in, and it does actually separate requests to get all these, which kind of sucks, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. And so you could nest these inside of each other. So you could have one HTML tag that includes other ones. And
Right, so they kind of use it as a dependency management tool.
next file is this one. All right, yeah.
Yeah, so here's, this is actually the layout, one of the Meteor layout files for our dashboard. So you can see there the core drawer panel is actually an HTML element, just like you would do any other kind of element. And it has a bunch of other Polymer.
This thing over here.
Yeah, the core drawer panel kind of encapsulates the entire page, and then within that, you can see that drawer attribute. That's designating that, hey, everything inside of here is part of this sidebar pretty much. And then you can see down, if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see the main, which is like the main content, and that's where Iron Router, you can see where it will do its main yield, which is, so that just yields in like the routes, whatever your templates for that route will just get chucked right in there.
Yep. And so there's a lot of stuff to learn, to understand all these elements. This is not all of them. There's hundreds of them. But I'll just add that the docs from Polymer are pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but they have demos of all of the elements, and it's pretty easy to understand what they do once you go through that. So let's see. Let's jump back into this. So. Cool that we have a library of elements. Even cooler is that it's a framework for making your own elements. So this is this is all it takes to make and again, this is all an HTML5 spec. This is not like a framework, right? So I think it's important to distinguish between what HTML standards are and what a framework are. Frameworks are maybe going to go away. It's pretty hard to get rid of a HTML5 standard. So this is, so there's, you just define a template and a script that feels a lot like how Meteor works, right? You have a couple of different pieces, but then you have this little tag at the bottom that you can include. So if we were to embed this in our code right now, hello tag just renders a div inside of it that says hello. But from the outside view, it just looks like a tag.
Right, so normally right there in that Polymer function, you would pass some arguments, which are object hashes of a bunch of other things, and you can actually set up event handlers, listeners, what is it, like, you can actually data binding, two-way data binding, which is cool. So it's a little bit of overlap right there with what Meteor already does for you. So there's not a whole lot of need to do that, but
I think it's good to show, so these elements emit events just like anything else on your page. So maybe you could talk about core responsive change. I don't even know what that one does.
So I mean, these all emit standard events just like any other kind of any other tag would. This core responsive change, that's an event that's emitted by the core drawer panel when the screen gets too small to do it. So on that event, we're doing something. I don't know. But,
what are we doing?
But the bottom line is that the events can be listened using the event map, Meteor's event map, just like normal. Nothing to worry about.
So what are the risks with Polymer? For one, it's pre 1.0. Anyone have any experience with a pre 1.0 framework? Yeah, it's cool. It's moving fast. But there are breaking changes, and if you're not paying attention, you're going to get behind, and then it sucks to get behind. So and the Google, so Polymer is a Google project. They're moving really fast. They literally sit in the same room as the Chrome team, so everything they do in Polymer gets integrated as natively functioning in the latest Chrome releases. So it's kind of cool. Like if you're using this stuff in Chrome, it's going to be super fast. But however, it doesn't work in old browsers at all, which is a bummer. But any of these browsers that are now, they call them evergreen, will be working either through a shim library or eventually natively.
Right, so we kind of skipped over that before, but Polymer does include a polyfill library to backfill these older browsers that don't have the spec completely implemented natively.
Yeah.
There's a nice chart on their site that shows you what's implemented natively on all the browsers and what's covered by the polyfill.
Yeah. Another little annoyance is that Safari is you have to do some extra CSS work that's kind of just routine.
It's really just a duplicate. It doesn't support this deep combinator, which you can use to kind of pierce the shadow DOM to style the inner pieces, but
and then
it's not that bad.
I don't know how W3C politics work, but I don't think these other browsers have to implement any of this stuff. So maybe this dies someday because only Chrome wanted it and everybody else blocked them. right now, Safari literally, they actually took away some support, but they're claiming that's in preparation to doing it right, so to re-implement it. So they took away some old implementation of this stuff. So yeah, one more thing. So it's cool that it works on web apps, but what else is really cool is that this stuff is actually like the material design spec is, what did I do wrong? Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
All right. The material design spec is really around mobile devices. So this is another app we're working on. So we're actually working on 3 projects right now that use Polymer plus Meteor. And so this is just a mock-up. This isn't a fully functioning app. But you can see the same features that we were seeing in the web app are working here. Well, kind of working here. What's up with that? Interesting. We'll skip that one. It worked before I plugged it into this thing. And yeah, maybe it was here that I was doing that. Yeah? Oh yeah, you have to type for it to pop up there. So these controls work on mobile apps as well as web apps. These animations are really smooth. Obviously, even on iPhone, which is running Safari's browser, it feels pretty smooth. On Android devices, it's going to be even better because it's using Chrome. And these little animations are all free. They're all part of the library. So we're excited about our ability to build mobile apps using this stuff without having to think about any of these animations, because their implementation of the UI features are pretty complete. So, yeah. So we're building mobile apps now. Yay. All right. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about Vulcanize?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, you end up.
Sorry.
No, doesn't matter. You end up, when you use all these HTML imports, it's actually making a lot of subsequent HTTP requests back to your server or anywhere to get the new components. The Polymer team has a NPM package called Vulcanize, which actually will look through an index or your index file, kind of see all the dependencies you need, and then traverse those and get all the dependencies those need, and concatenate those all into one output file. So we built a package for that. It's called Vulcanize. Pretty clever. And what it'll do is all it does is it hooks into the Meteor build tool chain, and then kind of if there's an environment variable set called Vulcanize, if you run if you put the environment variable Vulcanize equals true before you run Meteor build or Meteor or a modulus deploy or anything like that, it will go ahead and tap in and then Vulcanize and then insert that output file into your head. So you only make one request.
Yeah. So it reduces the number of requests. So finally, we covered a lot of stuff here. I posted a lot of the links on a blog post. So if you go to our blog, you can follow along some of this stuff. And I'd implore all of you, if you have an app with users, which all of you have apps with users because Meteor kind of has that built in, love to get feedback on user cycle. Go join and help me make that a great product. Finally, we're hiring here in Las Vegas, and then other people in major markets. And San Francisco, yeah. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have a couple minutes for questions if anyone would like to ask one. Dan?
Okay.
So the integration seems pretty light. Do we need any atmosphere packages or just?
It just works. I mean, so do we need any extra packages to do integration? And the answer to that's no. You just have to use that. You have to use Bower to generate the files to be in your public directory. And we really had. I mean, I was actually shocked how easy it was to get it to work with Meteor. It's kind of a testament to Meteor. At the end of the day, these are just HTML tags. So Meteor works pretty well with HTML tags.
Question. So let's say you need some more advanced widgets like grids or whatnot. Can you style them with Polymer paper, or how do they play with other widgets?
Yeah. So how do you, like, if it's a more complicated widget, how would that work is the question, I think. Is that a
Third-party widget, because they don't implement all the widgets.
Yeah. Okay, third party. So like I like to use the example, like MailChimp could create a MailChimp tag that is a Polymer element that you just pop it in, add some attributes to it, and it would actually execute all the JavaScript. Maybe it would use Ajax to send the data on the back end. It would be isolated. The functionality would be isolated from any your app. You could drop that into an Angular app or a Meteor app or anything. So these components can be extremely complicated. They have a component that's drops the entire Google Maps, a Google Maps instance in with just a tag. So I think that's pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
Last question.
There was talk before about drawbacks of using Polymer in terms of it making lots of extra
Yeah.
text and demanding extra JavaScript stuff.
Yep.
So you guys wrap that with your Vulcanize thing? Or
Yeah.
wrap someone else's Vulcanize thing?
Yeah. So the question was the many requests problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so Polymer actually released an NPM package called Vulcanize. So all the package does is it just taps into the Meteor's build system. So if you want to Vulcanize it, all we do is just run the Vulcanize stuff, and we just kind of.
Does that just Vulcanize existing Polymer components, or if I create my own components, I don't?
Yeah.
It's really independent of the components themselves. So it will look for it. All it does is look at the HTML imports, and then we'll just go through all those and then find all their dependencies and just throw them all into one file.
Yeah.
And then.
If I create Polymer,
Yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, we have some DI specific.
Yeah.
We've written a few, and yes, it does them all. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And by the way, there's other, like Mozilla has an Xtags library. There's a lot of, there are other component people. There's probably 1,000 components out there already. So yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
So we're going to take a very short 3-minute break for a lightning talk. So if you're a lightning talk speaker, please find your way backstage so that we can mic you up and get you prepared. For everyone else, you can take a minute to stretch your legs. But we'll be starting very, very soon.
What's your name? You're working on the blog pack? Yes. Yeah, I'm the one that submitted the document for the RSS thing. Oh, yeah. The section. Yeah, still on. You know what? You won't get it that yet. I'm still going back and forth with Gerard on this other thing about the rally. Once they start, when they start the talks, like they have everybody up here, so we. Yeah, it's more, probably more ways than it needs to. Like the whole thing. Where are you here from? I know, I saw your face, I said, I've seen that avatar. I thought I'd introduce myself. Except for your number. Yeah, so, yeah, I got a bunch of concerns about the whole log package thing, because there are parts of it that I haven't integrated, because I haven't worked with it. It's nice, I don't know CoffeeScript, and so I kind of used the CoffeeScript to JavaScript converter and kind of figure out what's going on. I cloned the repo and I converted just parts of it, and it works actually by doing that. Yeah, so I think I need to learn CoffeeScript, but we'll see. Right now I'm not yet.
That's everyone? All right, we're getting started again, so please take a seat. So we have 6 great lightning talks lined up for you, starting with Rahul.
All right. So can everybody hear me all right? Is it working? Great. So I'm here to basically waste 2 minutes of your time because I made something which is basically useless. And it's just kind of a thought expressed in some code. So I just wanted to drop it, and then we'll be out of time. So it's the only thing that's good that I can say about it is that it's the shortest package ever made. That's why it's also useless, because this is what the code does. Now, if you recognize what this does, then you immediately know that you don't ever want to ship this in production because this will destroy all your animations. Specifically, why I find this useful is that as a package, it allows me to develop in a way that causes everything to animate. Now, if you're familiar with Meteor, you're familiar with the fact that CSS live injection happens whenever you change your CSS file, right? So you change your CSS file, you save, and the CSS changes. But it changes so quickly, often, that you don't even notice the change. And I found that adding this package, this redundant, useless package of 1 line of code, by animating those changes, it helps me understand what's going on. So I'm able to develop animated applications like this not because the result is possible due to the package, but because the iteration towards the result is due to including the package. And it leads me to some interesting questions, such as, should we be focusing more on this kind of packages instead of building packages that allow us to modify our result? Rather, should we have more packages helping us iterate, right? So when we include stylus in our app, or less, or CoffeeScript, it's helping us develop. There's a reason for that. But most of the packages we develop together are all about the result. So my question is, should we focus more on, not my version of a useless redundant package, but more packages like this that really help you speed up your development? And should we have more animation-specific packages and perhaps imagine what animation can mean for you during development and not just as a result? And this is a form of prototyping, obviously, right? Working iteratively towards a result. This is the kind of tool that I use, and I take it out when I ship. So what kind of packages can we make if we prototype? I recommend that you try out my useless redundant package of 1 line of code. That was the whole talk.
All right, does anyone have a question?
Yeah. Could you make the package only work in development?
So the question is whether we can make it only work in development. I don't know. Is there a Meteor is development mode?
There isn't.
Yeah, you could use them. I could probably hack it, but then it wouldn't be a package with 1 line of code anymore. And I wouldn't have one thing to say about this package.
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, thanks very much, Rahul.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Ben Green, who will be speaking about exploring reactive MySQL.
Okay, let's see. So I've been working on this for the last couple weeks. I would not say it's production ready, but I've got a couple of things working as far as getting a select statement out of your MySQL statement working reactively with Meteor. So today I wanted to show you how to convert the leaderboard example to using a MySQL backend. So let's see, I'll get logged in here. It's going to show up. Jiggle it? Yeah? worked at check-in. Oh, come on. Oh, here it comes. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. So, okay, we can probably read that now. Okay. So I'm going to make the new example leaderboard. Call it my demo. And I've got one new package that works. And basically what you do is you publish a select statement. I don't know if everybody's used MySQL. It's kind of the default. Okay. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to install the package. Oops. Until MySQL. And this is on an i3 computer, so not quite as quick as many. And we'll get Meteor started. I've got a couple other Meteors running right now, so port 4000, and let's start changing the code. Oops, that might be too big. So in Mongo, you don't really have to do anything to connect to the database, but with MySQL, we're going to rip out all this Mongo stuff. We don't need that. We'll start by, so we do create a handler for our database, do MySQL.create connection. And in here, we've got to have some database host name. So we got localhost. You got the user is on my local machine here. Don't look at my password, it's really secret. And we got to have a database, so we'll just call it demo. And let's make that right now. So, oops. And what do I call it? -e, create database. Oh, did I spell it wrong? Yeah, I did, huh? Create database, my demo. Okay. And I've got some demo SQL here. So basically, I'm going to create a table that looks exactly like the leaderboard demo. You got the name, you got a score, and I'm just going to add some players down there. I've got just some scientist names and their scores, so we'll insert that real quick. So instead of this line, we'll just, oops, it's not in this directory though. Okay, oops, forgot the database, what'd I call it? My demo. Okay, now let's put the code in. So we're connecting. One thing, this is a wrapper of the node MySQL object, which if you've ever used MySQL with Node.js, all the syntax is exactly the same. I've just added a few extra methods to make it work reactively. So it's actually, if you use the PCEL :MySQL package that already exists with Meteor, you can use this. It's the same interface. You just get the extra options. What's that? Oh, did I do it different here? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so db.connect. And now the first part to making it responsive or reactive is you gotta, this is one of the things that I added, is you initialize an update table. Oops, I can't spell it all up here. Update table. And you've got to specify a name. So you want to use something that doesn't exist in your database. I've only got one table right now. Doesn't really matter. We'll just call it updates. And so now we've got our database connected, and we've got our update table. We need to start publishing our select statement. So just like you're used to, you can call meteor.publish, and we'll call this all players. Okay, so in our publish function, this is where we make our select statement. And this is kind of where the main addition to the node MySQL package comes in. So we've got a method on our connection called select. And this method takes the first argument is your subscription handle, which is the context of a publish function. So that's why we pass this here. It's going to send all of our messages over DDP, just like your Mongo would. Oh, wait, that's not right. Not a function. Sorry, object definition. And so in here, we're going to be specifying our query, which is a pretty simple one to get all the players. So we'll select everything from players, order by score descending, just like the original demo. And we're going to set up some triggers. Did I get it right? Triggers, yeah, okay. So one of the things that the package does is it's going to rerun our query when changes happen, but we don't want to rerun the query all the time. If we've got a query with joins and all kinds of fields in there, it's going to be really slow. So that is not going to work. What we do is we specify triggers. So on this one, we're going to have it anytime anything changes on the players table, it's going to rerun this query. And you can specify it a lot more fine-grained. You can say if just a specific field matches a certain value, then rerun the query. But for this simple demo, we're just going to say table players. OK, so we've got our triggers. We got that. From. Where did I miss from? Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm not quite the SQL expert. OK, so instead of a Mongo collection, we're going to have a new MySQL subscription. And this will automatically call Meteor subscribe for you, so you don't have to do that extra. Oops. OK, so let's see. What's that? Yeah, I was going to get it up at the same time, and then I was going to show you how this works, and then I'll go through and I'll make the, oh, I'm already out of time. Oh, OK, we'll make it quicker. OK, so the players function, this one's going to change. Instead of using a Mongo query here, oops, what we're going to actually be doing is we're just going to be returning players. Players looks like an array. It's extended from the array object. But in order to make it work reactively, you either have to call .depend, or the other method that I've added is called .reactive. It does the same thing as tracker.depend would do, except it returns the data as well. So for our players, we just need players.reactive. And to get this one's a little bit more complicated. Oops. So we're going to change it to player. Oh, where'd it go? Players dot filter, because we've got an array of players. We've already got the result here. So I'm going to filter them based on a function. And we'll say return player.id equals our selected player. So then we'll say this is actually going to be, hopefully it's going to be an array with one item in it. So we need, oops, player. Yeah, that should do that. And so our database in MySQL doesn't have underscore ID, it just has normal ID. Oh, my browser's on the wrong.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off. You're about 5 minutes over time.
Oh, OK.
But perhaps you could come back and show this to us again with like a.
All right. Well, do you want to see?
How close are you to finishing?
Is my computer frozen? This, yeah, see, it's got the data in there. And I can. Okay, so let's see. MySQL, so we'll log in. Since I don't have the method hooked up, I'll just do it here. Oh, wrong password. And we'll say, so what do I got? Let's update plank. So we'll say update players set score equals, what do we want plank score? 100, where name equals plank. Oops, I got to spell it right. Okay, one changed, and okay. Sorry for the overtime. It goes much faster at home. Any questions?
Questions?
It's up on GitHub. You go to github/numtel/meteor_mysql. If you search on Atmosphere, just search for MySQL, you'll see numtel MySQL in there. I've got an example with the leaderboard up, and it has method stubs so that these actually happen instantly. You don't have to wait for the poll to come back. And yesterday, I came up with a way to make it work very similar to oplog. This demo right here is using a polling table through the memory of MySQL. But I actually wrote a function in C that compiles and integrates directly into MySQL, and then it makes a TCP connection back to your Meteor server, so you get instant updates and you don't have to wait for anything, and that should really help with scaling. As far as doing the polling table, you're kind of limited to one Meteor server connection because you got to use a session variable. But it's looking pretty good. If anybody wants to help out, I would love to have somebody who knows a lot about MySQL or just has excitement for it. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next up we have Michael Nagel, and he's going to be showing us Rainbow Reader, a biology exhibit for the Tech Museum of Innovation.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about an app that we got to build for the Tech Museum in San Jose. And the heart of their app is they designed a synthetic biology exhibit where kids got to grow colored bacteria, things that would glow red, green, blue, randomly. And the core of the experience was there's a bio part where kids get to make their own plate. And then, like a cooking show, it just happens to be there. You don't have to wait a day. That plate ends up going on a light box. And the question the museum had was, giving kids that tactile biology experience was one piece of it, but what other ways can you hook into this pretty deep experience in a high flow, lots of kids coming through type of way? So what they came up with and what we built for them was an initial Meteor app where you get an individual view, you get some basic stats about what you found, what colors, what colonies. So there's a touch screen here running a Meteor app. And this Meteor app is doing some interesting things, like it's controlling Gphoto, which triggers this camera to take a picture. And then you can see faintly the lines around each colony. So Meteor is then making a second call to OpenCFU, which is a biology computer vision package. And it's figuring out, from this photo, how do I make sense of what colonies I have and what color's in there? How do I take that plate and process it? So the individual has their plate. They see what's going on in it. It gets processed. They see this animation. They also get a perspective on what colors were rare of the ones that they found. So one of the ideas of the museum was how to position the individual experiment across an exhibit-wide stream of exhibits and give each person a notion that there's actually an exhibit going on here, and that exhibit itself is a large number of exhibits that are continuing throughout the course of months. So they were playing with this idea of individual view and exhibit view. So this view was just highlighting what things were unusual in your plate. How do you draw attention to that? And how do you distinguish this kind of neat visual and just start to look at it with a little more sense of what's going on here? What are you seeing here that's interesting? So the other thing that we built for them was a histogram along the axis of a color wheel. And this was the heart of having the beginnings of an exhibit-wide view. So whereas this view was individual and just on the screen in front of you, this view here was showing the colors for each of the things that have been found, each colony, across the whole exhibit. So to show the app itself, we start with this intro screen, giving you an introduction about what's going on, some basic notion that DNA engineering is happening. You're prompted to take your plate of bacteria and put it on that light box that we saw. You take a photo, and in this case, we have a stock test case that we're using, but this would be your photo that you saw. You would see the analysis of it come up, where you see circled the colonies that have been found. There's an interesting distinction here where you'll notice that not every colony that the human eye can see, the computer vision can see, and that's one neat detail that we can expose to show this computer vision process, it's strong, it's not perfect, and that's one conversation point that this gives us. We then animate the rare colors and just pick out what things in this plate were unusual. And then we prompt the user to go to the main exhibit, that big color wheel that you saw. And so that's running here. And the idea with this is a color wheel. That animation goes from what was on that individual plate back to the total exhibit view, so someone can see where did their colors enter that whole plate. And what pulses is what just got recently added. So some of the neat things about this project is Meteor was a natural fit in that we have these two apps running off of one database. And we found that one of the museum's priorities was looking at how do you make a fast flowing experience based on data landing when the attention span is more of a high flow environment. And that worked really naturally with this. So I'll take some questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Michael?
Is this live right now?
So this ran for, I want to say, a couple of weeks testing period. Thank you. The question was, is this live right now? So the museum ran this for a few weeks, and all those slides that I showed were from that test run. We're doing a little bit of tweaking on the performance right now, and then we're giving it to the museum, and they're overhauling it into the next stage of their exhibit with it. Now.
All right, thanks so much, Michael.
Sure.
All right, next up we have Dan. And Dan's going to speak about packaging third-party libraries properly.
Awesome, thank you. That's not the first slide. OK, so I'm Dan DV on Twitter, and that's important. You'll see why later. This is an interactive talk. I'm going to need your help. The more of you, the better. It's really simple. You need to be logged into Atmosphere. OK, anybody has Atmosphere accounts? Yeah. Great. And you need to go to this URL, especially you people from cyberspace who watch online. Let's go to this URL. There's going to be some clickable links there. OK, and I want a show of hands now. Who has used a Bootstrap library in their Meteor project? Awesome. How about Moment? Even better. And Font, awesome. Great. There's a huge problem with all of these packages on Atmosphere. These are live iframes, not a screenshot from 2 weeks ago. And this is Font Awesome. If anybody knows right off the bat which one to pick, that would be great. And here's Moment, kind of a similar situation. I hope nobody picks MRT Moment. It's been automatically migrated on August 4. OK, so the problems with these packages, first off, they're vastly out of date. This guy is Font Awesome 4.1.0. I'm not sure why anybody would want that when you can just get the older packages of the Font Awesome package, but it's there. It's live on Atmosphere. That's why I need your help. Let's flag this one. There's a URL at the bottom. If you click that, you'll end up on its Atmosphere page. It needs a few flags. Then you have packages from the old MRT days. There's supposed to be an image here, but the problem is there's been a migration in August, and a bunch of packages just came in from unknown authors, and you often cannot get to the real Atmosphere page, and they no longer work. And when you don't have the authors, let me see if I can go here real quick. OK, so this is the Atmosphere page for, well, it should be the page for Font Awesome. the most popular package that we find here, if Atmosphere works. Is that the URL? Yeah, great. OK, so we find this as being the most popular package. And we go to its GitHub. And we check the package.js. And we see this line here. And that basically is a source file. It's kind of like ordering a car and getting one of the industrial robots in the trunk. Because it's not the fonts are quirky. You need to know what you are packaging. This is a really old version of the slides. And I got a beach ball. OK, much better. Or not. OK, there's a much better way. You just fork the original package, and then you send a PR to the original author saying that, hey, I forked this for Meteor. Please import it. It's really simple. These are the files that you need, only 4 of them. And you have full instructions on GitHub there on how to package these things. And we already have Moment, Font Awesome D3, and Bootstrap, and other packages are coming, but feature integration straight from the authors. And what we get is that we have same-day updates from whoever the packager is, like Bostock will publish D3 for Meteor. And we will get rid of these wrappers, which are old, and this is where we have to flag. And then we have Atmosphere versioning, minifying all the bundling process. You can serve them offline on your intranet, and you just have them straight from the source. And later we can add Meteor-specific stuff. And if D3 says they have a Meteor version, that builds awareness of Meteor. So these are the takeaways. Here's how you can package these things, all the instructions you possibly would need. And you'll need Atmosphere namespaces. That's where you contact me, because I reserved a lot of them so that nobody squats them again. Somebody squatted Moment, got me really angry. So if you want to package the sound library, let me know. I'll give you access to the sound organization namespace. And you should start official packages and flag the older ones and the ones that are bad. Thank you.
Any questions for Dan?
Thanks.
Positive comment. All right.
I can speak about what if the author doesn't agree with packaging your PR. And there's a simple solution. Since you have for that package anyway, you can just publish out of your fork and point the Git URL to your fork and keep it in sync later. We are now working on automatic monitoring of the GitHub repo, that's the source, and once there's a push of a new tag, it's going to publish automatically. But the idea is you don't even need the consent of the original author. Assuming you respect their license, you can just go ahead and publish.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, next up we have Brad Vogel and Olaf Mate from Mixmax.
Oh, should he have this computer?
You can put it on the chair.
Oh, great. Looks like we do. We're actually just a glitch art project, in case you were wondering. Let's see if we hook up AirPlay again.
It's downloading packages, sorry.
Did it hook up? Yes, it did. Awesome. As I mentioned, definitely a glitch art project. Hi, everyone. I'm Olaf.
And I'm Brad.
We're here from Mixmax. And Mixmax brings the power of the web to email. So everything that you can do on the internet, you can now do directly within your mail client without leaving your inbox. And before diving into the Meteor app, I just want to show you a couple of examples of what this means. So the first thing is that we create really nice visual previews of links. In this case, Alice's Twitter profile, because incredible sweater. Attachments on Mixmax are embedded directly in the email, so you don't have to download and open them. But if you want to, you can just click through and kind of get a visual sense of what the attachment is like without having to download and open. If you want to set up a meeting with someone, we make it trivial for you to propose a couple of times, and the recipient just taps on one of these times, and the meeting is automatically set up. I could go on and show you a ton of examples of these, but just to kind of wrap up, of course, we also do surveys that work directly in email. And with that, Brad is going to show you what the Meteor app looks like.
Sure. So let me show you what the compose experience looks like and why we chose Meteor and what makes us a bit of a unique Meteor app. So first of all, Mixmax is built inside of Gmail. So it's pretty interesting. So it's a Chrome extension that takes over the Gmail Compose window and actually renders, this is an iframe here that's made to look like the Gmail Compose window that's actually a Meteor app. And to demonstrate it's Meteor, we can change the theme color here and it automatically communicates. Mixmax is definitely unique because we have all these different iframes working within Gmail. It's really built inside out, right? It's built inside another product. We also use Meteor and live syncing for all our email apps. So a few of the apps that Olaf showed you are here. We can insert what we call availability. You can propose meeting times with other people. Click OK, and we automatically sync that to the email content directly. Overall, Meteor's been a great choice for us. We've definitely had a few challenges that were unique to us. One is that you can have multiple Gmail tabs open to different accounts. So how do we handle that? So I had this kind of creative hack where I pass through what Gmail uses to indicate that it's a different account, and I have it highlighted up here in the URL bar. It's just a number, an index. So I have to pass that through all the way down into accounts to look for a different login token inside local storage. So that was certainly unique. We also have this really, really rich content editable wrapper, our own editor that we built, and we're working to integrate it into Blaze and use Blaze sub-templates that we render, that handle all the interactivity within there. But just a couple challenges. Overall, Meteor's been really great, and we invite you to try out the product and hammer on it a bit. So we prepared this special URL just for you all if you want to check it out. And we're also hiring. If you like to hack Meteor as much as we do, we should talk.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Do we have questions? So Rahul has a question. So yeah, stay up there for one more minute.
Sure. Can you please get acquired by Google?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, thanks.
Right. Do we have to repeat the audience question?
Okay, sorry.
Can you please get acquired by Google? Yeah, it would be great if you would use us instead of Gmail. So,
yeah. So please. Yeah.
Any other questions? One in the back.
How difficult was it to wrap it in the Chrome extension?
Not very hard at all. I'm sorry. So the question was, how difficult was it to wrap it in a Chrome extension? The Chrome extension is really just rendering a bunch of iframes on the page, and we try to use DDP as much as we can to facilitate the communication between the iframes. There were a few places, like we have email tracking that renders a little subtle icon in the sent view that I had to render an off-screen iframe and listen for post-message events to come back to draw that little icon. Of course, I'm working on a DDP client directly in the extension, but I'm also competing with Gmail for global namespace, so like anything goes inside that namespace. It's a little bit tricky.
How are you doing with like inbox compatibility? So, on different devices and that can actually see everything that you do?
Very, very good question. So how do we deal with differences between email clients? Because there's a broad spectrum all the way from what Olaf showed you. The Apple Mail client has full CSS3 support. That's how we achieve the slideshow animation, all the way down to Outlook, which is the word rendering engine, right? So it's barely HTML. But we have a templating engine that will generate the superset of all HTML. And we do our best to do creative feature checks, really, using only CSS to render the highest capability of the email client. So definitely check it out and send it to your Outlook email address, and you'll see how we render it. And we do a pretty good job.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, now our last lightning talk speaker for the night is Phil Cockfield. He's a co-founder of Respondly, which many of you know. It's one of the most well-known Meteor production apps. And he's going to speak about getting started with UI Harness.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I've given a talk a while back about the UI Harness, and let me just get the screen size sorted out here. Cool. So I won't go into the details of what that was all about because it's in the video and it's up on YouTube. But at the time, it wasn't public and it wasn't out in the package server. But it is now up in the cloud. And what I'm going to do is spend less than 3 minutes showing you how to get started from absolutely nothing to a running app with UI Harness. So let's start by creating a new Meteor app. So Meteor create, and we'll call this thing foo. It's going to spin away, increase the size. And here we have a new app. I'll CD into foo, and let's add a package. So Meteor add respondly. If I could spell respondly, UI harness. So it's going to pull the UI harness package down. I'm just going to add another couple of packages just to get us going. Meteor add coffee script. And let's open up this thing in Sublime. So there's a couple of files in here. In fact, I'm just going to throw away the boilerplate CSS and the boilerplate JavaScript. So we're just left with the HTML file. And within that, I'll ditch this. Let me increase the font size a bit. Ditch this boilerplate, and then we'll just drop the UI harness in. And we're done. We've now got a UI harness. I'm going to step over to the command line, start up the Meteor app, and we'll see what we've got. So that's chugging away. Wait for it to open. And here, port 3000. And we're in a starting position with an empty UI harness. So the UI harness is all about having this canvas here and a structured, principled way of getting test code up and wrapped around a programmable UI component. So for demo purposes, I will add our core package controls, which are public. So we have two sets, some are public and some are private. All the ones that were required to create the UI harness are public. So that's Meteor add respondly core public specs. That's going to add those packages, and once it's done, we should see the server spin around. If I did that right.
Specs.
Aha, specs. And I even wrote it on screen so that I wouldn't get it wrong. So, so that's spinning and rebuilding. And we can see that a specification library has turned up. We can click in there. We can see the controls that are in there. Here's a checkbox, simple checkbox. It's in a disabled state if I enable it. So here we have on the left-hand side all the test fixtures that let us manipulate this thing whilst we're developing it. We can toggle the size around, maybe jump back out of that and see that same control working in a more complex environment. This is a tree of these things showing indeterminate state, et cetera, et cetera. So I have no seconds left, but that's the UI harness. You can pull it, and documentation and more elaboration coming very soon. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, do we have questions for Phil?
Silence. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. All right, so that's our program for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers tonight. Our next Devshop is going to be Thursday, January 29th. We're going to be going back to our usual last Thursday of the month default in the new year. And we're featuring a talk on parallel testing by Sam Hatoum and Mike Rissy, who are co-authors of the velocity testing framework for Meteor that many of you know. And we're also featuring a talk by Zach Alexander of A Portable about using Meteor in production at A Portable. So please RSVP if you're in the San Francisco area on Meetup. And if you're planning to join us online, please go to devshop.meteor.com and save the date. We also feature We also run featured Devshop talks in London, and more details on the next Devshop London are coming soon. If you're watching online, please subscribe to the Meteor YouTube channel right underneath your screen, and that will notify you of new videos and future live Devshops. For those of you who are here in person, please help us clean up by throwing away a piece of trash and moving your chair into the corner back there. We still have plenty of food and drinks and snacks, so please feel free to stick around for a few more minutes to hang out. And yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone for coming. See you next time.